Of Q broadcast, it's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Starz. And the best part, there are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
We live in a world where men are told it's harmless. It's just entertainment. But let's stop lying to ourselves. Pornography destroys. It weakens your spirit. It dulls your drive. And it robs you of what real intimacy is supposed to be. Every click is a step away from the man you're supposed to be. We can't call ourselves leaders if we are slaves to a screen.
As someone that is prior service, I know all about discipline. And discipline isn't out there, it's within your mind. Porn rewires your brain, weakens your will, wrecks all of your relationships. It doesn't just stay on a screen, it invades your marriage, your confidence, and your actual purpose. As men, if we don't learn to discipline ourselves, we'll be ruled by our impulses. Now, it is time to stand up and take control before this silent war takes more than you're willing to lose.
Real men don't hide in the shadows of shame. We step up and we protect what's ours. We fight for our wives and kids, our own hearts. Twitter isn't just an app, it's a weapon. It's a tool used to break free and start living like the man that you're meant to be. The battle's here and it starts with you. You can stop living in shame and you can break free today.
Of Q Broadcast, it's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming.
Here at the Anomic Age, we know that these times of uncertainty are stressful. It is incumbent upon all of us to put our fears first and bow down to government tyranny. Gone are the days of freely leaving your home, working, and social interactions. In exchange for safety, we will trade liberty. At the Anomic Age, we understand. However, just in case you want to get off your knees and stop being a sniveling coward, check out the John Age Project at anomicage.com.
Meet Ann Morrissey, who is here with her daughter, Dareth. Dareth is 17 years old. Mrs. Morrissey, I don't have to tell you that most parents would be extremely depressed if their daughter came home one day looking like this. I assume that was your response shock, anger, depression? What was it?
I was extremely angry. I really went bananas.
Yeah, how old was she when this happened?
Possibly 13, 14 years old.
We're talking like it's a disease, and
Well,
yeah. How did she explain it to you, Mrs. Morrison?
there was very poor communication until we went into counseling. And it almost broke up our family. But through counseling and Serena, I can understand it better.
What do you understand?
That she feels like she doesn't want to be like everyone else, and she wants to be her own person. And through the dress code and her lifestyle, she's expressing this. It doesn't conform with our rules, but we're learning to cope, and it's a very, very difficult thing. Extremely difficult.
Dareth, let's let you talk for yourself. You're from Long Beach, California.
I just can't handle being like everybody else because that's what everybody else wants, you know. Just because somebody else does something does not mean that I have to do it. You know, I have my own morals and ideals, and I go by them.
Are you drug-free, Dareth?
Yes, I am.
Is this a political statement then? Do you have some misgiving about the society that you see?
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, you know. A lot of the people are really aware of what's going on, you know, and I don't like it, you know. There's a lot of problems. I don't like the way society is based.
What bothers you? Give us some of the misgivings you have.
The rich, the poor, the people starving, the wars, you know. Why can't, you know, everybody just get along and just live their life?
Here at the Anomic Age, we know that these times of uncertainty are stressful. It is incumbent upon all of us to put our fears first.
Alan, we only Chevy.
Propagating truth in a world of lies. You are listening to the John H. Project.
Trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no one.
You found it. You're here. You're headlong down the runaway train that is the Anomic Age. I'm your host, John H. Happy to be back with you once again, coming at you proudly from the coastal plains of the old North State. We got a great guest coming up tonight, so I'll kind of keep the usual show suspects a little bit brief. But before we get into anything, please check out anomicage.com if you've not already done so. Please like all the likes, subscribe to all the subscriptions, paypal.me/anomicage, patreon.com/anomicage as well. That's the best way you can go support me, follow everything I do, and so much more right there at anomicage.com. So before we belabor any more of those points, I got to introduce our guests so we can not miss a single moment this evening getting into it. So this evening, we've definitely got Mr. Grant Cameron here in the Anomic Age. Grant is a veteran UFO researcher and investigative journalist with decades of experience examining government secrecy, disclosure, and the deeper intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon. He is best known for his extensive research into official disclosure efforts, the inner workings of groups like the Aviary, and the rise of the modern disclosure figures, including Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy. Cameron had also conducted in-depth investigations into high strangeness experiences, such as Chris Bledsoe exploring the intersection of UFOs, consciousness, and non-human intelligence. In a field dominated by speculation, Cameron stands apart for combining historical documentation, insider testimony, and firsthand consciousness exploration, including his unique and controversial work involving high-dose psilocybin experiences aimed at probing the nature of consciousness itself. Thank you so much, Mr. Cameron, for being on the show with us today and taking some time. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. It sounds like I'm famous.
And I'll put the website on there. That's one thing I left out. presidentialufo.org. If you are looking at the screen right now, that's about what you're going to see. So please check that out. And that's the best place to go for everything, Mr. Cameron.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
Indeed, man. Well, as I was kind of prepping for this show and kind of pondering everything and anything we could be talking about, the one thing that kind of kept coming into my brain was that sort of like over the years, it seems like all this, if you want to call it just paranormal stuff, has kind of been very categorized and very segregated. You know, there was the cryptid people, there was the UFO people, the ghost people, and then on into the consciousness people. And one thing I've always loved about your work is it seems to really meld the fields, or, you know, to get all Ghostbusters cross the streams and show that there is a very interconnectedness between these different phenomena, or in many cases, I mean, some of them is sort of cursory, but I believe there's a real connection between a lot of this. And that's something that you've touched on quite a bit.
Yeah, even if you go back and look at IONS, the big paranormal psychic investigation stuff that with the brain and stuff like that. I mean, they wouldn't deal with UFOs when they were contacted by Ray Hernandez to be a part of the Free Foundation. They said, we can't. Our donations would just go through the floor. And that was the whole deal. You have this paranormal versus the UFO community. And as you mentioned, there's all this segregation. And I guess my view of it is that I had the experiences, so I really can't deny it. So I start with UFOs. I had 5 close encounters in 75, 76. So I knew the phenomenon was real. I had no interest in pursuing it anymore in terms of looking at sightings. Most of the UFO community still, you know, looking at sightings, trying to prove to their neighbor there's something there. I knew there was something there right from the word go. But then 2012, I have this experience. I'm watching Colin Andrews' lecture on crop circles, which I have no interest in. I'm at the World UFO Congress. It used to be run out of Laughlin, Nevada. And they have things going from 8 o'clock in the morning till 11. So you don't go to all the lectures. You decide, okay, I'm going for lunch. I don't want to see this. And I figured, like, I don't want to see crop circles. And then I thought, well, Colin Andrews is a pretty prominent guy. He's, you know, I've never seen him lecture. I should pay respect and go see this guy lecture. So I go, I'll go in there. So I go in there, but I'm not really paying attention. And that was when I had that download experience where 3 things were put into my head with absolute certainty. And that was, if you go back to the Canadian government in 1950, the Canadian government stated that the Americans had told them, this is a top secret memo, that other things were associated with this saucers, such as mental phenomena. And the Americans aren't doing very well. So that came into my head. Then the statement made by Dr. Eric Walker, who was the chairman of the board of the Institute for Defense Analysis, which is a major military think tank. I had 14 honorary doctorate degrees, was president of Penn State University for 16 years, very powerful guy, knew everything was UFOs. And at one point, he cut the conversation off with an interview that was being conducted. And he said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And the guy said, I don't know, like not. And he said, look, unless you understand about ESP and how it works, you will not be taken in by the control group. And that was put in my head. And then the third one was Ben Rich. That was 2 years after Walker was confronted as he was going out of the door by Jan Harrison, who said, you know, I spent my whole life looking at UFOs. I need the propulsion system. How did they get here? What's the propulsion system? And Ben Rich turns around and says exactly what Walker said, identical. He said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And then he said, everything in time and space is connected. And he said, that's how it works. And gets in his car and drives away. So that shifted me. And I took a lot of flack in 2012 from, because I had I was doing the presidential stuff. So I had all the, you know, the documents and all the stories about the presidents. I'd been to most of the presidential libraries. And I was sort of like Stanton Friedman. I was sort of like the archivist that was, actually dealing with documents. And I remember one major interviewer asked me, I can't believe you've done this. I can't believe you were the president guy. I mean, you lectured in a suit, and now you've gone over to this woo-woo stuff. And I said, well, Jerry, I tell you what, I didn't really go there. I kind of got teleported there. I didn't ask to go there. And so I got dragged into one rabbit hole after another. And I've followed, with my books, I've just followed synchronicities. I'd have a synchronicity. I'd say, that's weird. I'm going to go down that road, and it would lead me to something else. So my comes through experience, and I guess everything comes through experience. Whatever it is that you have thought, you have a feeling, you have opinion, but until you have the experience, it's not really real. And that's where I have some, problem with science, where science says you didn't prove it. And I say you can't prove anything. In fact, science is just theory. It's guessing. So you have a guess. It's called a hypothesis. And then you run some experiments, you do observations, then you make conclusions, then you make another guess. And then you do some more observations, another experiment, and more analysis, and you make a conclusion, then you make another guess, and you hopefully you get closer and closer to the answer, but they're guessing. But when you have an experience, as I had with the download experience, and people will describe, once you've had a paranormal experience, nobody's going to talk you out of it. You know exactly. And it's that sense of knowing, which I said, the 2012 experience, the hardest thing to explain to someone is, if you've had a paranormal experience, is the feeling, that the emotion that comes with it, that this is real.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I mean, I definitely never had any sort of UFO experience, but on the paranormal realm, yes. And it's, for me, it was always justifying it to myself in many ways. I was like, you try to say, well, maybe that was, I can't, it's that early stage of trying to rationalize what you just saw. Maybe that was a light from across the, something stupid. And then you come back to, no, that Occam's razor thing, it is what it is to a certain degree.
Yeah. I always sort of felt sorry for myself. I'd rather have had experience, like a paranormal experience, like a near-death experience or something, rather than a UFO experience, because the UFO experience was kind of cool, but it still doesn't answer the basic ontological questions. If you have a paranormal experience that sort of defies time and space, then hey, we're actually living in a sort of a dream world. The closest I ever got, I guess, when I was doing the psilocybin, where I had a couple experiences that sort of showed me that the world is a little bit different than what you think is actually going on. So but paranormal experience, I've had synchronicities, I've had these kind of things, but nothing compared to people who come back with these near-death experiences and abduction experiences and stuff like that, where they know for sure. Like for me, again, I'm just like a scientist, I'm guessing. When I have a hypothesis about who we're dealing with, what kind of beings, I really don't know. I mean, are you just guessing? The people who had the experience are the people you got to talk to. And they're the people in the UFO community. I don't know if the paranormal community is the same, but nobody wants to talk to them. It's like, oh, it's anecdotal. They just thought this or whatever. And it's like, no, and these people have been inside the craft. And you have to take a look at these people. 60% of them near-death experience and UFO experience say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And I say, don't you think we should talk to these people? I mean, these are the last people you should be ignoring, because you can count all the lights in the sky you want. And there's even the guy who ran the OSAP program. It sort of summed this up. He was talking about the fact that when the program was run, they had $22 million from the government. So they ran this program, and then they didn't have any more money, and it sort of faded away or whatever. But he said Senator Reid, who had gotten the money for them, said that they were proposing to, before it fell apart, they were proposing to go to $150 million budget. And he said we weren't going to go chasing around the world after flittering UFOs. And he basically said everything is the paranormal at the ranch. Everything is paranormal. The UFOs are under the paranormal umbrella. And here's a guy who's got a PhD from MIT, ran the government program on UFOs, and basically said, no, the paranormal is the umbrella. UFOs is just one segment. And that's exactly what you got, like when Ray Hernandez had his experience. He ran the Free Foundation, talking to 4,200 experiencers. He had this experience before he started it, which led him to start it, where he was shown this wheel. It was taken out of his car, sort of an out-of-body experience type thing, and this wheel was spinning, and these beings were They had remote viewing, psychic phenomena, ghosts, mediums, all these sort of things around the wheel as it moved around. And the being said, in the middle of the consciousness, he said, you got to realize, guys got to quit parsing all this stuff. It's all the same thing. So he came out with this idea, and that's where I got my idea, was that it was all the same. And then it was confirmed by this James Lakatsky, who said the umbrella. We went to the Skinwalker Ranch not for UFOs. We went for a UFO for paranormal phenomena. That was the main intention from the word go. And then the other thing that backs it up is if you listen to Jim Semivan, who was a senior executive in the CIA. He had an experience. So he was, of course, once you have an experience, then of course you're down the rabbit hole and you're trying to figure it out, which is what they want you to do. They want you to try to figure this thing out. They create awe and curiosity. But Semivan was running around, and he had this, the beings in the room, and his wife and him both had marks on their body and stuff like that. And he asked for a briefing from a guy by the name of Ron Pandolfi, and Pandolfi said, you got to get special clearances to see this. So he got the clearances, and they said to him, okay, Jim, get a room inside the CIA for 6 to 8 hours, or for 8 hours. So he said, okay. So he got the room, and he said high-level contractors and scientific people that had as many clearances as he had came walking in the room, and he said they scared the living daylights out of him. So the interviewer asked him, well, what about UFOs? What did you learn? He said, they didn't learn anything. They don't know. They have nothing. They know UFOs exist. They got bodies and crafts. Other than that, they know nothing. He said, well, what did they talk about for 6 to 8 hours? He said, psi. All the psi stuff is right. That's what he was told. UFOs, they really don't know the bottom line of the thing, but the psi stuff. So you can see that the CIA sort of understands the psi phenomena, and that's what they're going after, is, whether you can get somebody's head, whether you can get a UFO to land, talk to a UFO and interact with other beings, get in the field as, inventions. And the book I'm writing right now on the muse, the idea that everything's in the field, and that, these people had the answer to everything in the universe. Just all the answers are there. And it's your ability to shut down your left brain and get your intuitive brain to tap into the universe and pull the answers down. And that's where inventions come from, songs come from, all this kind of stuff. People think they invented, and they're actually pulling it out of this field.
Man, that's wild. And it kind of connects to something I know you've talked about a little bit before, but the connection between a lot of these major rock stars, musicians. I'm sure we could go all the way back to poets and lyricists of any sort. And a lot of them really seem to have these sort of phenomenons. I mean, the only one I can stick in my head right now is Sammy Hagar, but I know there's a litany of other ones that all claim to have these bizarre phenomena, and you're just kind of left wondering, what in the heck is this guy having this phenomena for, and not, Bill the plumber or what have you. What's the higher brain or left brain, or that really artistic, layer that connects to this or resonates with these sort of things?
Yeah, I think that with musicians, it's the idea that most musicians are very right-brained. So it's the left brain, it's the rational, analytical male brain that's causing the problem. When they try to hypnotize you, and the left brain's going, come on, this is garbage. Come on, this is not going to work. Come on, are you so stupid? What are you doing in this thing? And it's that thing, that skeptic that's talking. And so you see most musicians, for example, major musicians, the Stones, Beatles, Barbra Streisand, goes down the line, can't read and write music. They have no intention of reading and writing music. And the reading and writing music is left brain. So it's practice, read notes, practice. Right brain music is basically you sit there and it's the idea, like, musicians, I get them and I ask, so where's the song come from? And they go, I don't know. It's like they asked Bob Dylan. He wrote Blowing in the Wind, one of the most famous songs ever, in 10 minutes. And they said, where'd you get it from? And he goes, yeah, I don't know, from that wellspring of creativity. And that's the thing. You just sit there and wait for a song to come in your head, and they just plunk it around on the piano like Coldplay. Chris Martin runs most. He talks about how he can't read music and how he composes a song, and he just plays around, and suddenly it sounds right, and some words come into his head, and he's got these major songs that he's produced, and it's basically the same thing. So musicians are very left or right brain, female brain, where they're able to tap in. They really don't care. The left brain is sort of they can shut it down, especially when they're doing the drugs. because that's what drugs do. Is it shuts the default mode network down, which is your sense of identity, the ego, and all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to learn a little bit about how all these pieces sort of fit together. And I think science is starting to come over on the idea of consciousness. If you take a look at Michael Levin, if you've ever watched his work, he's at Tufts University on microbiology, where he's created these little, what I guess you call them, little beings or things that float around. They get little arms on them and stuff, and he makes them from frog cells and skin cells, and he just sort of disassociates the cell from knowing it's a frog cell, and they create these little things. And he basically says it's consciousness all the way down. And so here's a guy will win a Nobel Prize in biology for the stuff that he's done on bioelectrics. And he basically says there's a bioelectric field, and all they do is alter the field. And you can actually show how, like cancer cells, where you got a cell going along the side, and it gets recruited, and it just whoop, they can actually take a cancer cell and then disassociate itself from cancer, and it'll rejoin the group. And that's the whole idea: is a cancer cell is nothing more than a cell that has left the group and starts to duplicate on its own. And that's a principle that UFO is always trying to show, is this idea I always bring up about who wins the Super Bowl, which football team wins the Super Bowl. And it's the team that plays together the best. That's the best chemistry. If you've got some prima donna who doesn't want to do what he's going to do, it's like if you're on the 1 yard line and you're 3 points down in the Super Bowl in the last play or whatever, and then you go in and you call a running play, and then the guards and the tackle say, "What do you mean? I'm not going to block. Are you kidding? I'm running for a pass." I mean, that's the kind of attitude that they're trying to get across, this idea of oneness, that the things that work the best are oneness, the things where Atman equals Brahman, where all the pieces fit together and they're all doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And even Levine talks about this, that there's cells in our body who are organized to work together to do what they're supposed to do, and we're part of a bigger cell. We're also to work together to work for a bigger thing, but we're all divided. It's me versus you. It's this idea of competition that is sort of taken over. Who's ever got the most toys when they die wins. Rape, pillage, kill, and steal. Sure. And the UFO is trying to get this message across. The two messages are love. Everything's made out of love, the whole basis of the universe, and this idea of oneness. And what I think they're doing, all the paranormal phenomena in UFOs, at least, it probably paranormal phenomena as well, because it all may be coming from the same source, is what they're trying to do is cause awe and curiosity. So I sort of call it the Jesus circus. So they do all these weird things, because when they do something really weird, like a paranormal thing where like a butterfly flies through the window, and it flies right through the glass and then lands, and then it flies back through the window again, and you go, what the heck is going on? And that's what they want, on curiosity. So I say the UFOs, what are they doing? They're not doing anything. They haven't landed for 30 years. There has not been a UFO land on the ground for 30 years. So what are they doing? They're just flying around. So when someone has a UFO sighting, it's like, so what was it doing? And it's exactly what happened when I saw it. I go, that is so cool. But what's it doing? It's not doing anything. And it makes you wonder. And Einstein described that wonder and the curiosity, this kind of thing, is the basis of all scientific and art discoveries. And that's basically what it comes down to. Unless you're on curiosity and you're trying to figure out something, you're not going to do any research. But it's when something's outside the envelope, or as Gary Nolan talks about, when the dot comes outside the bell curve, then you say, why is that dot outside the bell curve? And that's when you win the Nobel Prizes. You don't win the Nobel Prizes by doing the same thing over and over again. You do it by being on the edge and finding out it's paranormal. It's beyond the normal. What is going on? Why is it doing that? And you start to study it, and that will lead you to an answer, because it will have an answer. It's not like there's no answer there. There is an answer. There is a way that it's done. There's mechanics, but it's up to you to chase the paranormal stuff on the outside, the stuff that causes awe and curiosity, and that's how we advance. And so we are, whether it's paranormal phenomena or UFO phenomena, we are on the leading edge of everything. Like all the discoveries are going to be coming out of our sort of area, in terms of people that are doing the proper research and understanding the consciousness element, and the fact that there may not be any time and space, all these kind of things, that the world is not the way you think it is. It's all vibration. Rather than even if you go back and you look at the basis of the universe. Go to AI and say, what is basic in the universe? Is it fields or is it matter? And they'll say fields. Matter comes out of fields. So everything's a field. And you start looking at it and you realize there's no color. There's the mind is just putting together all these fields and it's organizing it. And the mind is a field, the brain is a field, everything's a field in all these fields. And you realize it's just this weird thing, which may be why they describe the UFO phenomena as being indigestible, that they don't want to release it because it's indigestible. It's not going to be simply, oh, there's some alien, it came from Alpha Centauri or whatever. It's all this really weird stuff about the world is not the way you think it is. There's no time, there's no space, there's no color, there's, it's all an illusion and all this kind of stuff. And people go, what are you talking about? Because they're just not there. And so we put it out, as Max Planck said, like Max Planck discovered quantum physics and he got ridiculed as well. And he said, you do not advance science by convincing your opponent he's wrong. Science advances when your opponent dies. But one funeral at a time, the new generation is not offended with the idea. So that's what happens. Our age and our generation will have a lot of skeptical view, but the young generation hears, Skinwalker Ranch, UFOs, and they go, yeah. They just gobble it all up and believe it all. And the view changes from generation to generation. Because I knew, like, for example, I knew Stanton Friedman, the top researcher in UFOs. He worked for 61 years, and he would argue with everybody, with all the skeptics and stuff like that, the top skeptics, Michael Shermer and people like that. And when you came right down to it, you said, who did Stanton ever convince? Did he ever win those guys over? No, he didn't win anybody over, because people have their views and they basically don't move. They don't shift. That's where this idea of the generations is where the ideas will shift.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I could do a whole jag on how stupid debating is most of the time, but I'm not going to go there. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing that is kind of funny to me is I think like the popular culture kind of pushes everybody into one framework or the other. And I couldn't help but think of, in the 70s, it seemed like there was a whole lot more on consciousness. There was transcendental meditation, and I felt like people were kind of at least ebbing in that direction. And then it sort of took this sharp turn into, let's just focus on the weird lights in the sky and, not to throw bars, but then you had the communion book and you had everybody, look at the grays, and popular culture pushed a lot of sci-fi movies and television shows. And it seemed to shift everything from perhaps what it should be on the consciousness, on the metaphysical, on the waves, if you will, into let's focus on, is it nuts and bolts? Is it the Pleiadians? Is it the reptilians? Is it the, fill in the blank? And at the end of the day, who gives a bleep? That doesn't really solve the greater consciousness issue. You're just kind of quibbling over nothing, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, so it always goes like it's like the idea of the Marx, the thesis versus the antithesis. Yeah, thesis and it moves back and forth. The pendulum swings right, left, conservative, liberal, and back and stuff like that. Yeah. So we did shift with the materialist. The materialist view is the thing that really kills it. This idea of what's going on in the United States, where it's like just total everybody, whatever you can grab, it's a battle, this competition, this capitalism thing, which is it was the main push. And that will shift the other way. Where I see the shift is through these guys like Michael Levine, like where they ran the UFO program, and he basically says, the fact that UFOs is under the paranormal umbrella, and it's the paranormal stuff that's the most important thing to understand this consciousness aspect. And then when I did the book, on flying the craft. So I have 36 witnesses who claim they were allowed to fly the craft, which I thought was totally absolute nuts. When the first one told me that story, she was in her 70s, and when I had the consciousness download. So I started to lecture on consciousness, and some woman said to me, "Oh, you're still going to talk to Pam Dupuis?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." And so, "Oh, that's good. She's coming to the house on Monday." So this woman comes to the house, and I don't I said, "What did Stacy say?" I said, "I don't know. I just want to talk to you." She comes in, starts talking about remote viewing, and she was abducted as a child, and like on and on. I'd heard all this stuff before. She went on for 45 minutes or whatever, and then she says, "Oh, and I was flying the craft last night." And I thought, "You're flying the craft?" I go, "Oh, come on." I was thinking I could throw her out of the house. That's a bridge too far. And because she was in her 70s, and I'm thinking, Saudi Arabian women in my head, Saudi Arabian women can't even drive a car without a man in the car. And they let you fly the craft. I said, she said, yeah. And I said, they let you fly the craft? And she said, yeah, I've flown three different models. And I said, oh, come on. I said, how do you fly a craft? She says, you do it with your mind. And she said that. I went, oh, that's why they set me up with this woman. And then suddenly all these people started to appear that had flown the craft, like Chris Bledsoe. And I said, you flew the craft too? And then I said, stop, I want to interview you. I want to call you on Skype. I want to interview. I don't want to, prejudge, give you ideas before we have an interview by talking about it. And so I did that. And now I've done a second book on that. And now suddenly these military guys working for the government, this Skywatch group that somebody says is a front for the US government, suddenly comes out with psionics. I'm going, did they take my idea and suddenly, throw some people out to tell this story? And these guys are now talking about bringing the craft down. And there's apparently going to be a video that they've actually talked one down, and they've got a video of this thing on the ground and the beings coming out. And Bob McGuire, who was a guy who worked at the Institute for Defense Analysis, where Walker was, very high level intelligence guy working on mathematics and stuff, is part of this thing. And so I'm going, well, if he told that story, and they said this video is coming out, and they can talk these crafts down, and they can communicate and stuff like that. So we're getting into this sort of discussion is sort of changed from UFOs to the fact that, is a craft actually alive? There's even a weird story told by a scientist out of California, Dr. Jack Sarfati, who claims that he can build a flying saucer, and he's, real vocal guy. And he tells the story that they're running a program on the East Coast. And these are the kind of stories that really sort of move around, where he said this program, and his Navy buddy was running the program, and he said they couldn't get in the craft. And then they figured out that the only way you can get in the craft, that the craft is alive, it's conscious, and it has its own ideas about how things should work. And they would not open the door of the craft until there was somebody who was at the right mental vibration. Get in the craft, and then the door opened, and his buddy flew it around inside the hangar, but never outside the hangar. And he said this idea. And then when you get this idea that the craft has a door, that you can't open it, and then you look at near-death experience. I did a book on these crossovers. I called it The Big Game. I was going to call it Super Bowl, but people told me don't call it that. So it's called The Big Game, where I look at cross things, where you start to realize it's all the same thing. Like, so you go into near-death experiences, and people will talk about, I go in this building, and there's all these rooms that are closed, and then when you have the right level to go into that classroom, the door opens and then it closes like molten lead. It just goes back together again. There's really no door there, and that's exactly what these people are describing in the UFO experience, where the door opens and then it goes back and it seals itself, and you can't tell where the door is and stuff like that. Or I had one guy told me. Fact that his being is being, everybody names their being. So there's usually one alien that tells them what to do and describes and calms them down, and the rest of them are just running around doing stuff, whatever, which makes it sound like, is this an alien or is this a spirit guide? It's kind of like, what's going on here? And so his being takes him to the spirit world, and he's with his dead mother. It's just exactly like a near-death experience thing. He's in the middle of this beautiful field, and the colors, I've never seen those colors before, and the grass is talking, and you hear that same story all the time. And off in the distance is this small temple, because the guy's he's a Mormon, so it's this small Mormon temple there. And his mother says, Ron, when you die, you're going to get a room in this building. And then he says, oh, okay. And so they go to the building, and she said they go inside, and he said, Grant, the weirdest thing was, he said, it was like 100 times the size inside as it was outside. And I go, 100 times the size inside as it was outside? That's exactly what UFO people describe. They go inside the craft. Chris Bledsoe said, these are 30 feet on the outside, and he goes inside. It's like the football stadium. He looks back outside, it's 30 feet. He goes inside, it's a football stadium. And so I'm thinking to Ron, I go like, what, are you in a UFO, or are you in a spirit world, or where are you? And you see these crossovers, and you realize it's the same thing. Same as he talks about the fact that he goes down in this room, or in this big building, and they have this table, and these crystals are coming out of the table. I said, crystals? Tell me about the crystals. And he said, oh, these crystals that come out of the table, and you look at them at a certain angle, and you can see your past lives and your lives. I'm going, that's Michael Newton. That's right out of Michael Newton, Journey of Souls, where you're between lives and you go into the library and you open the library and there's this crystal, and you look in the crystal and you plan your future lives and you can see your past lives and stuff like that. And it's in this 3D crystal. And then he said, his mother said, well, Ron, you don't get a crystal till you die. It'll come out of the table. And he said, oh, okay. And then he saw his dog's crystal. He said, oh, my dog has a crystal. And he looks in the crystal and he sees it. He's always wondered, 1972, the dog disappeared and he never knew what happened to it. He looked in the crystal and he saw the neighbor had shot the dog, threw it in the back of a pickup, went to the junkyard and threw it in the junkyard. And it's those kind of stories. Or one of the main guys in the UFO field said the biggest thing that he had seen in the whole UFO field is the aliens have this crystal. And they could show the crucifixion of Jesus in this crystal. And it was the same thing. You can see this crystal, you can see the past lives, you can see how the universe was created and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I started writing these books to say, man, you start looking at these I call them crossovers, where it's exactly the same thing, or people are in the craft and they say, no, there's no time and space. Time and space sort of disappeared in near-death experiences like that. Or they say, I could see in 360 degrees. And I go, that is just bizarre. Like, I mean, if you're going to make up a story, whether it's a near-death experience, UFO, that's the last thing you want to put in your story is that you can see in 360 degrees. Or the craft was alive. I put my hand on a panel. Everybody touches something different. You touch something. So you touch a panel, you touch the ends of a chair, you touch a joystick or whatever, and the being says to you, okay, John, it is within you. Where do you want to go? It is within you. Go within yourself. When you can imagine it, then we'll go there. And the person imagines it, and they say instantaneously, the one Ron said, he was outside the Milky Way. That was his dream, was to be outside the Milky Way, looking back at the Milky Way. He said, I looked out the window and there it was. He said, it was 1 second. And that's the thing. You see near-death experience, the same thing, where somebody has a near-death experience and they suddenly think of somebody and boom, they're at that person. They're right above that person. And they can instantaneously move around by whatever they think, whatever their thought is where they go. And so that's when it really starts to be at my level. It's in a book. So at least it's recorded, even though a lot of people don't read it, but that's going to sort of gradually more and more people will repeat that because we think we're not making any success. We're not getting anywhere. But I say, yeah, we are. We absolutely, because I was in 75. And I remember in 1975, if you saw a UFO, you were crazy. Yeah. If you saw 2 UFOs, even the people in the UFO community wouldn't talk to you. You would totally make that up stuff because there's no way you could see 2 UFOs. It was a random event. Nobody sees more than one UFO. And now we know, people are repeater. They see all this kind of stuff. And so to me, the whole phenomenon has really changed since I was there. And today you can say to young people, or you can go anywhere, like you can go to China, you can go to the darkest corners of Africa, you can go and wherever you want to go, where people have, never met white man and say, Area 51, I know what that is. Near-death experience, I don't believe it, but I know what that is. Skinwalker Ranch, I know what that is. And we don't realize the consciousness is rising because it's like the whole Hollywood thing. As long as they spell your name right. Everybody talks about it. The more we talk about it, the more consciousness rises. And we get up to where everybody's talking about it. And we're talking about things that we never talked about before. And people just accept it. Like Skinwalker Ranch, everybody just basically accepts. Yeah, it's kind of a weird place. So I hear there's all that weird stuff going on there. And people don't realize they're getting brainwashed, like the skeptics, rather than going and confronting them face to face, where they sort of make the sign of the cross and tell you to take 10 steps back. Instead of that, they have a show like on TV and they say, this is garbage. I'm going to watch this stupid thing. It's garbage. And you turn it on and you don't realize they're getting subliminally programmed by the thing, that the idea gets in their head. And so I think we've made a lot of progress in terms of people understanding that there is something weird in the world. You have the New York Times admitting that government has investigated UFOs. Now you got Donald Trump releasing these files. And according to the guy from Burleson from Missouri, stated that he got permission from Donald Trump to go to these facilities that are being identified as having UFO material in them, crashes and stuff like that. And he said every time he goes, they've moved the stuff. So we're at this point where, there's congressmen and senators. Absolutely nobody would ever get a senator to ever answer a letter on this forget about, run committees and stuff. So we are moving along, and it's like, one step at a time. And it's about the journey rather than the destination. Because even Walker said at one point, and I confront the people who are saying we want disclosure, because I say, disclosure of what? The bodies and crafts. We know that already. They've basically admitted they got bodies and crafts. They've admitted all that kind of stuff. So what do you want? And nobody really has a definition of really what they want. And the fact is, Eric Walker said to us at one point, he said, okay, admit it. You're just curious. Why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? What are you going to do when you discover it? And the thing is, what are people going to do? Because all they're going to discover is, yeah, it's real. And the government doesn't know. People don't believe that. They go, no way, come on. They know they're flying these things around. And according to Jim Semivan, he said, I'll bet a year of my pension to anybody that wants to take it on that they have no clue. And he said, because you got bodies and crafts doesn't mean you know what you're dealing with. And this is the whole thing. So people sort of have an idea about disclosure, but they don't realize, especially this consciousness thing, where, it's about vibration. It's not about physical stuff. It's about vibration. There's no color. There's no this, there's no that. And people are going, what are you talking? It's got nothing to do with UFOs. It's got everything to do with UFOs. That's what the message is. Yeah. The bottom line is, how does the world actually work? That's what the UFO thing is trying to defy. You think this is going on, and then they do something paranormal, and then you go, well, that's not how it goes on. And we realized that we really don't understand anything, which is what they told me when I was doing the psychedelics at least 4 times. They said, you think you understand everything? You haven't got a clue what's going on. And they kept doing it. And then the 4th time they did it, I said, okay, I've had enough of this. I did. The reason I'm doing this high dose stuff is to try to get answers to what's going on. So you tell me what the hell's going on. And then this voice says, we don't know either. And I go, oh, get out of here. We don't know either. So,
yeah, when you were talking, I couldn't help but think about the dream state, because a lot of the same chemicals induced with the psilocybins, the magic mushrooms, all the way into the ayahuasca elements of Central and South America. A lot of those really low level are introduced during the dreamscape. And it's so weird, because a lot of those same things, like you mentioned with the UFOs and even those crossover, can happen in the dream, which is so wild. You're okay, I'm on this office building, and then the next split second you're in your den. Your grandmother comes back and talks to you. The next split second, you're at work, or you're grading paper, whatever it is you're doing. It's so wild. But it was weird to me what you said also about the normalization of all this, because I remember being a kid, and nobody would really talk about this. This was esoteric and weird, and all those people are crackpots. But I had an interaction a couple years ago, and I always kind of try to gauge the room, like, okay, how much crazy should I talk about with the normies? Should I just dip the pin in the water a little bit? But I said something about lucid dreaming, and there was like a high school student, like in the realm that I was talking to, and she said, oh, I know. And she went all about into lucid dreaming, just like you said, like the consciousness is raising, like people that 30 years ago wouldn't either touch the topic or want to even talk about it. Now we're like, oh yeah, I know all about lucid dreaming, and I had a lucid dream. It's so wild that I do really believe that rising tide is kind of raising all ships here in a weird way, at least with the mental phenomena.
Yeah, the big change, I think, was the New York Times article, and that came from Jim Semivan. So Jim Semivan has this encounter with these beings that come in, and he's really upset. He goes, they violated my human rights. I'm thinking to myself, you're the head of covert ops at the CIA. Like, what do you ask for permission when you go across and steal stuff and kill people or whatever they do over there? Like, come on, this is a joke. You violated your human rights. But he was really upset about the whole thing. And it's like, they injured my wife, and I'm really upset about this kind of stuff. And why would they do this to me? And I actually wrote an article about it. I said, you know what they did it to you? To get you off your ass. That's why they did it. And that's the whole thing, is that he's the guy that went to the government and said to the 3-letter agencies, because he's a high-level official, he said, okay, you guys had your chance to get out the UFO story. You didn't get it out. We're going to drop this thing. We're not going to release classified material. We're dropping the story. And that's how he went to the New York Times. He's the guy behind the New York Times article. So why did they do it? Because they wanted him to go to the New York Times. And that's when suddenly all the young people came in. It was like, oh, the New York Times says that UFOs are being investigated. It's real. And we had influx in the UFO community, massive, of all these, young kids who are good with computers and stuff like that. and they basically dominate the field now with podcasts and stuff like that. And they know how to work that angle and stuff like that. And that came from the New York Times thing, where it's like, if the government or the New York Times says it's real, then it's real. But until then, everybody always denied it. But then when the New York Times said, yeah, it was real, suddenly everybody just sort of said, that was what changed. They said, that's what changed. That's when I got into UFOs. And you realize that this was a major event, and it was caused because these aliens went into his room and basically rattled his cage.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, one weird aspect of this that I wanted to touch on for real is, I'd love to talk to Chris Bledsoe. He's like a few hours from where I am, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
But I love his information because he seems to have a real mental connection to this. And I don't know how to frame this actually, but, is there some sort of correlation between those people that are abductees, connections, people that have these mental capabilities, and the people that were in the GATE program, or the people that were in MK Ultra, the people that were in these things that are now becoming kind of commonplace? Oh yeah, we're admitting, we've tested on people for decades. We did torture, all this insane stuff. It's now coming out. Oh yeah, that's happened. But, is there some sort of connection between those people and the same people that are having the abductions, or able to communicate or fly the plane, so to speak, with these UFO entities?
Well, the expert on that, you'd have to interview my partner, Desta Barnaby. She co-authors books with me and stuff. She wrote a book on MK Ultra children. She was in the GATE program. She was recruited in the GATE program, and she put out the book, and it was actually sells pretty good. She got a lot of people contacted her. She's got 100 people that she has. She does polling, so she asked them all these questions about what's their psychology state and their right brain, left brain, they've had a UFO experience, all this kind of stuff. So she does all this kind of stuff with this group, and it's getting bigger all the time. So she's the expert on the MK Ultra stuff. I think with those, they're picking up kids with the ability that you can sort of tell when a kid is going to be good for the program. CIA is always recruiting. They're recruiting like the top people in the universities and stuff like that. And there was this idea where they would have these kids, and they would a lot of training that would go into training these kids in terms of getting it. Chris, I don't think was part of that program. Chris is his comes to, if you look at the thing where I say to people, if you think UFOs is just UFOs and they're coming from other planets, this kills it. It absolutely kills the idea. And that was Chris. He had the regression done. He had the experience in 2007, 2008. He has the regression done. And they actually lose the transcript. And I have it. And I'm talking about, his son comes to me, how'd you get the transcript? I mean, we haven't got a transcript. Where'd you get the transcript from? And I said, well, I assume your father gave it to me. I mean, how else would I have the transcript? And because I knew Chris very well back in the day. And in the interview, they say, when did you first encounter these beings? And he said, they had been with me since before I was born. And then the regressionist said, in your last lifetime? And he said, yes. And then you see the poll. The free survey poll says 25% of all UFO experience say the being that they were dealing with, because there's always one being. So there's three, say, little beings pick you up, they take you in, but then there's a being, a hooded being, or the tall gray or whatever, who always talks to you. It calms you down, tells you what's going on, and he always has a name. And so Chris had his experience, and he's I lost my train of thought. The being that he was dealing with, I think two beings were in his last lifetime. And so that's why I say to people, if this being was in your last lifetime, then what are we dealing with? It can't be extraterrestrial. It's got to be spiritual. It's got to be ontological. And then you start seeing other cases that sort of back this up, that it's ontological, where other people describe the being in their last lifetime, or the fact that they were chosen. You'll ask an experiencer, if you ever get one, you ask them, do you have a mission? And they'll say, yeah, and tell you what the mission is. Or they'll say, yeah, I think so, but I don't know what it is. I just have a feeling I got a mission. And it's this whole reincarnation idea, that you came in to do this thing, that you chose this sort of route that to be abducted or to do whatever. And you even see that with Jim Semivan, where Jim Semivan's being interviewed by this interviewer, a friend of mine, And he says to him, he says, he wants to talk about the experience. And he said, oh, I don't want to talk about the experience and all this sort of stuff. They're still investigating and stuff. And he's really cagey about the details of this experience with these beings in his bedroom with his wife. And then the guy, he sort of gives up and he says, oh, just one last question. Was there any telepathy involved? And then Jim Semivan says, that was the weirdest part. He said, I was standing there and he says, the beings were in front of me. And he said, there was somebody behind me. And I had this guardian type thing going on about it. And I'm thinking, guardian type thing? I'm saying to the interviewer, I go back to the interviewer, I said, that's good. Was it our right side or left side? Because Michael Newton talks about the fact that when you go in front of the council, your spirit guide is standing behind you on the left side. So he has this thing with this guardian type thing going behind him. And then I'm thinking, these witnesses, I'm going, hey, that's what I can't remember what the guy's name was from Los Angeles. He was a fighter pilot from Iraq, flew F-16s. My son's got a pilot license. My father was a pilot. And so I said to him, hey, you're a pilot? What do you fly? He said, oh, I fly this, that. And he said, F-16s. I go, F-16s? You fly F-16s? He said, yeah, I'm a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. I said, sit down and tell me your story. He said, oh, it seems like a dream. I said, everybody thinks it's a dream. And it may actually be a dream. That's the whole thing. It's all a dream. And he said, it seemed like a dream. And I said, well, tell me your story. And he said, well, I just was in the craft. Suddenly, I'm in the craft. And somebody behind me says, I don't know if it's humans or aliens. And they say, go ahead and do it. And he said, I don't know what to do. And the voice behind him says, you know what to do, just do it. And he sees this panel, he puts his hand on his panel, and he said, suddenly it's like flying an X-16. Suddenly he's flying the UFO. And he takes one hand off, and then the thing doesn't stall. And then he's got the other hand, he takes the other hand off about this far off, so he can put it back down if the UFO stalls, and nothing happens. He said, I'm flying the thing with nothing. But the thing was, it was behind him. So then I'm thinking, hey, lots of people said there was somebody behind them when they were on the craft. So I went to Whitley Strieber and I said, Whitley, you're on the craft lots of times. You ever have the experience that you're there and there's somebody behind you and telling you what to do? And he said, all the time. And I suddenly realized, hey, I got another thing. This makes sense. And they say, well, is this actually like your spirit guide standing behind you? Is this like a big play? That it's all a play. You agreed to do this, and it's all this thing, and the aliens are actually in your soul group and all this kind of stuff, and you made an agreement with them to do this kind of stuff, to raise consciousness, to bring out the oneness, idea in the universe, and the nuclear weapons it's all a big, play, and you're playing a role. So that's where, I basically say, it's like Shakespeare. All the world's a stage. All the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and exits, and each man plays many roles. And it's the bottom line to the whole paranormal thing is to remember who you actually are. You are not John. I am not Grant. You are not the puppet on the stage. When you leave, you will realize it's a dream. And in your next life, this will be a forgotten dream. And you have to keep that in mind. We keep getting sucked into the illusion of the physical world and forget about all that stuff. And we have to, that's even during, I was doing this psilocybin one time, and I was listening to this Indian song. And it was chanting, and it was like this really cool Indian song. So I'm chanting along to this thing, and all of a sudden this voice says, Grant, don't you remember who you actually are? And there was a song about Shiva, and I'm going, Shiva? Who I am? Am I Shiva? Shiva's a made-up god. How can I be Shiva? And it's stuck. And then suddenly I got the idea. This idea of the puppet, that you got to remember who you actually are, that you are the, just here for to say your lines and then get the hell off the stage. Somebody else is coming on the stage, and that we're all playing this role. And then it becomes less, threatening and a lot more understandable in the fact that you are forever, you always will be forever, that you have something to do when you get here. Because you'll ask people, like most people are living lives of quiet desperation. They're running around doing nothing. They're just paying the bills, taking the kids to soccer practice and stuff like that. And it's not until someone says you got 3 months to live and they go, holy cow, what's going on? Where am I going to go? You and I spend our entire life looking at ontology. How does the world work? Is there life after death? Is there a soul? All this kind of stuff. And we're working on this kind of stuff. So we have this advantage, but most people they live lives of quiet desperation. They have no idea what's going on. And that's why we have this very important role, is to talk about it. That's all we can do, is talk about it and hope that somebody listens to this podcast and then goes, hey, I never thought about that. And then this awe and curiosity, they go, hey, I'm kind of curious. I'm going to read a book, and they're going to go in and they get dragged in by this awe and curiosity, and more people get dragged in until everybody believes that there is a soul, that there, that this is an illusion, that it's a computer simulation, whatever you want to call it. But right now, people, they're basically paying their bills. And if I had not had the experience in 2012, if I had not had the experience in 1975, I may have just been as stupid as they are. Because I was raised very religious, and I believed there was miracles. But I said, nah, maybe in the Bible, there's miracles. There are no miracles. I just basically believe there's no miracles anymore. And when I saw it, especially the second time, I'm going, wow, this is like a miracle. This is like being in the Bible. And I'm going, wow. And then I'm thinking, what you doing? It's not doing anything. It didn't make any sense. And I was going to university, and I couldn't figure out in university. I was taking science, and I remember calculus. I was saying to the guy, what's a function? Like, where's the numbers? Where'd the numbers go? It's like, this is nonsense. I think, how the hell do you make money with this stuff? I couldn't believe it. It's like, this is nonsense. And I couldn't figure out why I was there. And then when this happened, I go, hey, and I took a couple more courses after that, like death and dying. I took a death and dying course. But other than that, I just said, oh, cow. And I chased this thing my whole life, and I worked a job just to pay the bills. I always knew that sooner or later I'd be able to do this full time, and I'd be able to work on it. And it just obsessed me from this thing. And that may be the whole deal. That was my life mission. And everybody has a mission, and it's trying to figure out, why did I come up to Earth? Because in the end, it'll come down to, you came here to do something. When you leave, they ask you, according to Michael Newton's 7,000 Witnesses, they ask you only one question: how did it work out? You can't say Hillary Clinton, the dog ate the homework. They go, time out, time out. It's not about Hillary Clinton. It's not about the dog. It's not about it. It's about you. You agreed to do this, and all this stuff. And Michael Newton says, everybody says the same thing. Oh, I could have done better. I forgot to do this. I got scared. I didn't do that. And so it's this whole idea of, why am I here? And then when you're here, it really doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, because it's got nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with me. It's because they're not going to ask you about anybody else. And you may even have planned that person to come and do something to you to really get you under your skin, because that's what you wanted. That was part of the play. They're to annoy you, or to move you down a different path. And that it's all this thing where we're all playing these roles. And it comes down to, why are we here, and what are we supposed to do, and are we doing it? That's all that matters. Are we doing what we said we are going to do? Nothing else matters.
Man, I swear that could be the most powerful thing I've heard in so long, man. I love that, Grant, because it spoke to me, and I think it spoke to a lot of people that just feel like, is this it? Like, you just work this stupid job, you pay these stupid bills, and just like you said with the math, they're like, what the flip is a function got to do? Like, I'm trying to figure out the purpose of all this, and people are talking about a function.
Yeah. And it makes you feel important. That's why I called it I was going to call it the Super Bowl, like the big game.
Yeah.
I mean, most people don't even realize there's a game going on. You and I realize there's a game going on, and we are in the stadium. It's like Super Bowl tickets are like, the top tickets like $100,000 or whatever. And we didn't have to pay for a ticket. We got in. And not only that, we actually may be on the field playing the game. We may be the water boy or whatever, but we got to play the game. What more could you possibly ask for? What greater role? I mean, I think, like, what would I rather do? Nothing. Absolutely. How you feel honored. And it's almost like I say, you could be an untouchable born in the streets of Calcutta, India, and spend your time in the junkyard looking for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. You and I didn't get that. We got to play in the Super Bowl. What hell more do you want? It's like, wow. And you just go like, wow, I got to play this game. And then you realize you've got this role that the Bible says, too much is given, much is expected. That because you've been given this, you can't go after and say, well, I really didn't realize, I didn't know. We knew how it worked. I mean, we got no out by saying, well, we didn't have a UFO sighting. I didn't have a paranormal thing that got me to think about it or whatever. And people are at that level, and they will judge at that level. But I think we'll be judged at a higher level because we actually knew how it worked. And then if you didn't do anything, well, then, it's the old idea that you were given a talent and you hid it instead of investing the talent and tried to doing something with it.
This might be a question above everybody's pay grade, but we got to close here in a minute. But what do you think it is that you and I can have this conversation? I was talking to my wife recently, basically along the lines of the same thing. Like, some people just seem to be completely happy being I'm not going to be disparaging, but whatever they are, whatever their places in life, they're fine. They work that job. They come home, wife, kids, Super Bowl, all this nonsense. And I feel like they never even contemplate a tenth of what you and I are talking about here with that higher purpose, with that spiritual realm, the metaphysical. Is it just a raised consciousness versus lower consciousness? Are some people just meant to be whatever they are? I mean, I even look at it with people that, you see all these people that are just drugged out, alcoholics or whatever. I wonder sometimes if they actually have the same thoughts as you and I, but they can't take it all. So like, we got to shut this part of our brain down via drugs, alcohol, even addiction, whatever it is, I mean, I don't know, a lot to chew on there, but I'm sure you've thought about this too.
I think they're doing their thing, what they're supposed to do, learn whatever lessons by, whether it's being an alcoholic or whatever. I think it's all the lesson stuff. Ours is I think a lot of it has to do with the discussion of the phenomena, but more important, the fact that we had experiences. That's the Jesus circus. That's this phenomena, and I think it's like a phenomenon. I think it's I call it the intelligence. So I don't call it UFOs. I call it the intelligence because it's changed. If you go back to 1896, was flying around in wooden ships, and they said they were from Mars. Yeah, like, sure, you flew across the vacuum of space on a wooden ship. And it's like, and you don't realize that, and then it was the Foo Fighters in World War II, then it was the green fireball, then it was the Adamski crafts, then it was Betty and Barney Hill with windows in the craft. There's no windows in crafts anymore. And then you had the triangles come along, and then you had the reptilians in 1980. Before 1961, there's no grays. And you see the phenomenon is changing as it's going along. Mm-hmm. But you and I have these experiences. And as I said, like, I don't think I would, because I was into sports. I wanted to play professional football, and I was in a different world had the experience. So that's why I think the phenomenon is doing this experience thing. It's dragging people in, and it drags more and more people in, and then they raise the consciousness, and the other people sort of understand a little bit about it, and then they'll play the role next time. So I think it's just this. Everybody gets the same treatment when you get there. It's almost like this idea where they talk about everybody's equal, that everybody was just playing the role that they're supposed to play. And people have this idea of separation, which there's a good example I always use. If you're there and you know the near-death experience, you go into the light. You feel this unconditional love 1,000 times the love that you've ever felt in your life and stuff like that, this unbelievable love. And then you go back and I say, well, what happens if you actually go there and you go through the light and then you're on the other side? And then they say, oh, here's how it works. Atman equals Brahman. All the small parts equal the big part. There is no big part. There is no God. We are God. We are playing God. So everybody has to work the light. And you're working Friday night from 3 till 11, and you do the shift. And then you're there, and your worst enemy and everybody you hated all line up and to come. How are you going to treat them? Unconditional love. And that's what it comes down to, is when you realize how it actually works, and that you're part of the one, and they are part of the one. They're all the same thing. You have to treat them in that unconditional love. And if they come through and you're the light, I mean, what else are you going to do? And that's when you see on the other side, that's what the condition is that everybody is equal, and everybody is loved unconditionally, and people are working on different issues and stuff like that. And it comes down again to they may be at that situation. Like my son, for example. My son has no interest whatsoever. He's had a UFO sighting. He talked to my dead father sitting on the end of his bed. But he's busy. We live in Vancouver, so it's like $1.6 million for a house here, and everybody's got to have 2 jobs. Everybody's got to have a $100,000 job and to survive here. And he's into sports, and he likes to play the sports pools and stuff like that. And he's just in a different world. And you say, okay, that's his world. When he has a sighting, or they drag him in, or something happens, a trauma event or whatever, where he has to think about what's actually going on, someone dies or something like that, then they'll think about it. But everything's timing. And I always think that I'm not sure I'd be the same person. Well, I definitely wouldn't be the same person I was today if I hadn't had those two major experiences, the download experience and the one from when I had the UFO sighting. And then I had a third big download experience, which was really, really dramatic, where I know when I'm in the field. I'm able to sort of get in the field, and I know that feeling when I'm in the field. I had one where I got 24 things, and I'm sitting in the middle. It's cold, and I got my glove on, and I'm trying to write this stuff down on a piece of paper, and it's coming in my head, and then it stops, and then I keep walking, and it starts coming again, and I start writing it down and stuff. So I've had this, just the awe-inspiring honor of having these experiences, which other people don't have. And I think if they had the experiences I had, they'd probably be down the rabbit hole the same as I have. They just haven't had the experience. So I think that's a big part of it, where the phenomena is creating these experiences more and more and more all the time. And it's being validated now by government and by the New York Times, because I had the same thing. So UFOs, I know for a fact, I can tell you, whatever it is, there's UFOs. But if it comes to near-death experience, I go, well, I'm 99% of the way there, but I don't 100% believe that there's near-death experience or life after death, because I really don't know. I haven't had the experience. So that's why I always say I would trade that for all my UFO experiences, because UFO experiences really don't mean it. The near-death experience really means something. It actually tells you that you are eternal. There's no time and space, and you know, there's God, and there's all this kind of stuff. That I would change. That's why I did psychedelics, because I tried lucid dreaming. For years, I tried lucid dreaming. I tried meditation. I tried all this. I couldn't get anything to do it. And I go, okay, psychedelics, you're going there. You don't want to go there. It's on the roller coaster, but you're going to go there. So I was so scared. I mean, I was just petrified to do it. And I'm thinking like, oh my goodness. But I'm thinking, I gotta have some experience that's like a near-death experience rather than a UFO experience, because the UFO experience was dramatic, but it's still, you know, it's a physical type thing, which you're making a judgment, you're guessing and stuff like that. The near-death experience would give me the absolute assurance that that's eternal. So that's why I did these psychedelics and did them over and over again. And then actually, you know, had a couple of bad experiences where I learned this thing about the importance of, I call it surrender. In the beginning of the book, I say, surrender is the rule. Believe me, surrender is the only rule. And that was the whole thing. If you fight it, this whole idea, if you fight the thing, you end up in this sort of a dramatic experience where you're in hell. And so I'm in this hell type experience, and it's like, oh my God. And I'm going, oh, and they make you believe this is going to go on forever. And I go, okay, that's it. I took the drug. I got nobody else to blame for this but myself. And I said, that's it. This is where I'm going to live for eternity. I'm going to be in this situation. And as soon as I did that, it was over. And I was out and into the bliss. And I go, oh, that's how it works. So next time that happens, I'm just going to say, okay, I surrender, and I'll be out of it. And then it happened again, but they make you forget. You forget what happened the first time and everything. And it's like, oh no, you know, it's going to go on forever. And then it was like, it stopped, and then, you know, back in the bliss and stuff like that. And they can control us. That's where it came, this thing where you're fighting it. The people have the bad near-death experiences of people who don't want to let go. And I realized that you could start to understand these experiences, what's actually going on, and how you change the experience. Or you hear about the stuff about the Skinwalker Ranch with the hitchhikers, and that's reflective. That's what they say on Skinwalker Ranch. When you go on Skinwalker Ranch, it is reflective. So if you go there with a bad attitude and you say this is all garbage, get ready. You're about to have a bad experience. So if you have a good experience, and the same thing, the people that took the stuff home, they say, oh, these people took the stuff home, and it was you know, bombarding their family, and it was horrible and stuff like that. These were all special forces guys that went onto the ranch with their guns and stuff like that, and they were going to go hunt the Skinwalker. They're going to figure this thing out. So they had this attitude, this military attitude, and it was like the phenomena says, oh, you want to play the hunt the Skinwalker? Yeah, I'll play that game. and they were running for their lives. They won't go back on the ranch. They were so scared by what happened. They wouldn't go back. They'll never go back on the ranch. And then their family got bombarded. And it's like, welcome to the world. And so the world is, if you treat the thing positively, you're going to have a positive experience. If you go into the bad attitude in the paranormal world, you're going to have a terrible experience.
That's so amazing.
It's a big field to grasp when you get down to it. All the things, components of it's not a simple UFO or paranormal stuff. It sort of goes to the basic, how does reality actually work? And you and I have the honor to actually play the game and try to figure it out.
Wow. Well, I guess that's a good spot to leave it today, Grant. I swear, I feel like I could talk to you about 4 more hours, but, I know we got to wrap things up, but we got to do this again. That was an intense and great conversation.
Yeah, and if you want to do the MTA, I'll talk to my assistant. She's pretty well spoken and knows. She's got I think she had 20 books on her desktop. I got about 8, and like Michael Levine has 162. We're all doing the same thing, where we have all these books open at the same time on all these different subjects. And as things happen, we stick them in. But Desta is a pretty sharp interview if you want to do MK Ultra and the whole thing about the GATE program, which she is probably the foremost expert in the world, I'd say, on this program as to what's going on. She's pretty sharp. Like you have all the books behind you. I have the books behind me on the library here. And make the joke, people all have the books in UFO community. They get them all signed and nobody reads them. Desta Barnaby has read all the books. It's unbelievable. She's read all the books.
I got a ton of books I've started, and then life happens, and I got to pick it up again and start another one. It's
yeah. Anyway, thanks for the interview. Thanks for your time. Hopefully, 1 or 2 people got sort of inspired and decide they want to take a look further into the mystery.
Absolutely, man. Well, if you'll stick around for a second, I'll say goodbye to you off the air. One more plug for your show. Your website. presidentialufo.org. That's what you're seeing on your screen right now. I can't thank you enough, Grant. If you'll stick around for a second, I'll talk to you in a minute, man.
It's an honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, folks, if you missed any of that, shame on you. But the good news is you get to rewind it and listen to it again. Pause, take notes. I mean, good grief. That's exactly what I would do. As I always say, you can't do everything, but you can do something. So please try to get out there, do your part, make a difference. And I'll be seeing you sooner than later in the Anomic Age.
Thank you for listening to The Anomic Age, a John Age project. For past shows, further info, and to comment, go to anomicage.com. That's ANOMICAGE.com. Till next time, thank you for listening to The Anomic Age.